What is going on, everybody? My name is Dylan Spalding. I am the host and the founder of the great channel that is Spalding Media Network. So happy to have you along with us here on this Monday afternoon. We come off a very busy racing weekend that saw IMSA, IndyCar, WEC, also F1 back in action this weekend, and we will be getting into all the F1 news on this show, the Purple Sector podcast. We'll also be having Get a Grip coming up here soon. But without further ado, we welcome on our expert, the man on the mission when it comes to F1 coverage, Mr. Chris Everidge.
Oh, Charles Legg, we're here. We made it. We're back in action. We're ready to go. And let's go to our first slide of our presentation, please. We will speak about Mercedes later. Let's talk about China and the first wearable trophy. And who else would it go to besides Maximilian Verstappen? He wins yet again. He's not 5 of 5 because of Australia, but in our hearts, he is 5 of 5. He would have won that Australian Grand Prix. But anyways, it was a good race, and we're going to talk about how good that race was. I personally feel it was one of the better races of the year. I'm just very tired of not being able to watch them as an American, unless I get up at the ring. So I have not watched this race live once again. But I did watch the entire replay this time. Unlike last time out in Japan, where I did not, this time I watched all 2.5 hours of commercials on ESPN with every 20 seconds or every 20 minutes, Nicole Briscoe of ESPN saying, "Oh, we'll be back after these commercials. Don't worry, you will not miss a single thing." So I had to sit through that to watch, Verstappen win another race. But it was good. We also had a sprint this weekend. Can we talk about that? Hamilton getting second place in the sprint. That's the best we've seen Mercedes do so far. Of course, if you stick with us, Hamilton did not do that well. But Lando Norris was on pole for the sprint race. Where did he go? Finished 6th place. That's Lando for you. It was a different qualifying session. There's a reason Verstappen qualified 4th. But it was our first sprint weekend of the year. So we got to see a lot more racing than usual. This guy right here, Charles Legg, this was when he was at Sauber. Sauber had quite the weekend with Guan Yu Zhou having his home race. We'll get into that later. But overall for China, Verstappen winning the race, it's something that has basically happened every single time except one time that Sainz won. And I personally think that Sainz is the only person that can stop Verstappen at this point. So yeah, we'll go through the race here. A lot of things happened. We'll talk about the Ricciardo and Stroll incident. But let's move on here. Let's talk about Guan Yu Zhou at his home race. So we have not had China since 2019, I believe it was. This was right when, at the beginning of the year, we had Australia kicking off the season. And this is right when COVID happened. And basically, China had already decided that they weren't going to race. China was the 3rd race on the calendar that year. And when COVID was kind of kicking off in China, but still wasn't everywhere yet, that race was already canceled. Of course, then we ended up having everything canceled. And we haven't raced in China since then. So we finally got to race in China again. So throw this one over to you, Dylan. What is it like having China back on the calendar after 6 years?
Yeah, I think China, you look at this series, right, and they've had a lot of health issues going on in the country, and that's kind of what's prevented a lot of why they haven't came back. And it's good to see the race back on the schedule. I know there's a lot of political conflicts, you could say, that may be going on with the country. I actually had heard from Formula E that they aren't sending any of their American reporters over there for some reasons. And I don't even know if I'm really even supposed to say that, but regardless of that, you look at
Quick,
this.
cut it out.
Yeah, we might be able to cut it. But it's not that big of a deal. I mean, we understand what China has, but it's a great track, and it's going to be, it's a F1. It's kind of one of those staples on the schedule, right? So, I mean, it's good to see it back, and I imagine the fans are pretty excited to have it back, especially when you got some guys who are, as you mentioned, you got Zhu on the grid, who's a Chinese man right there. Zhao.
Guan Yu Zhou. Anyways, he's back. He finally got his home race. We're not going to throw it back to Dylan anymore for the rest of this episode.
Okay.
I feel like it would just bring down the value of the show. So let's continue about Zhou's homecoming here. Anyways, our producer, ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Spalding. That's why I'm here hosting the show for you. Anyways, he finally got to race at his home race. He's been in F1 for a couple of years now. He obviously had that big incident in Silverstone a couple of years ago. That was scary. We didn't know if he was actually going to stay on the grid. He is somebody that drove to expectations. I think he is a solid driver for what Sauber and Alfa Romeo have. This is an older picture. This was back when they were Alfa Romeo, but it was really exciting to see him at his home race. He got a lot of TV coverage. The fans cheered him on every single thing. He was passing Magnussen. He was passing Sargent on the front straightaway, and the fans were just super happy about it. So I was glad to see that. But will he be back next year? That's the tough question with a lot of different drivers. You got Ollie Behrman potentially going to that team next year. So I don't want to say this was his first and last Chinese Grand Prix, but it very well could be. So let's move on here to Lewis Hamilton. He qualified 18th. So I will throw this to you, Dylan. A driver that's going to Ferrari, someone that is established as Hamilton, someone who got second in the sprint race. Why is he qualifying 18th?
It's the car, man. It's the team. I think the team has given up on Hamilton. And I don't want to say it that way because I still think, Hamilton's a great driver. He's still one of the top drivers in the series. I think he's arguably top 5, maybe definitely top 10. Definitely top 10. Arguably in the top 5. Yeah, definitely top 5. I mean, I think Mercedes knows this is the last year. They don't have to put as much effort in, knowing that this is going to be the last year for Hamilton. I know Hamilton probably wants to win, but you see this a lot in motorsports, man. Like, guys will be on final years going to a new team. We saw that with Kyle Busch in NASCAR with JGR. We saw that with other drivers. The amount of input and the amount of resources that are dedicated towards a driver who may not be here with the team next year are going to be a lot less in compared to a driver that's going to be confirmed for next season and is going to be back with the team. So I don't think it's Hamilton. I think it's more so the team is not putting as much resources as they should be with a driver like Hamilton, given the fact that he's leaving.
Yeah, but to me, it's just super confusing how you go from the second place in a sprint race to qualifying 18th. And it's not like he didn't have that speed. He actually finished 9th in the race, which still isn't fantastic, but that is on par for about what Mercedes have been, which really isn't that great this year. Once again, Russell's outperforming him. So it's just, especially his radio after the qualifying, he's like, I saw memes where he's like, oh yeah, it's an easy top 10, and it ends up being like 18th place. So like 18th is slow. Like you have the two Williams, or more specifically Sargent. You have Sargent, you have the two Alfa Romeo, Sauber, Kicks, whatever. That should always be the bottom 3. The fact that Hamilton is involved in that is a little concerning. And we go to Miami where, next week, that's another difficult track. There's a lot of high speed. There's a lot of low speed corners. It's a track where we could see like Mercedes and McLaren struggle. So I'd be very interested to see what happens if Hamilton, for example, doesn't even score points next week. So let's go on to our next slide here. This was supposed to be a video, but I think this also explains Mercedes 2024 so far. Just a bunch of nothing.
It's a black hole, perennial
black hole of terrible, basically. Can you elaborate on, because you're not exactly an F1 guy, but you understand Mercedes. Why like this isn't good.
No, it's not good. It's a shame because Mercedes, right? I mean, they've for the past 15, 20 years, they've been probably the quintessential, they've been the team. They were the team. But now it's Red Bull, and it's all been about Red Bull. And honestly, even Ferrari's become better than Mercedes. It's probably Red Bull, Ferrari, and then you could even make an argument in McLaren or even
that's not an argument.
Martin.
Is.
It's
McLaren are like
Mercedes are probably like the sixth best team,
They're
fifth best team probably on the grid.
But it's just
it depends on who you talk about, really.
Martin,
it just depends
Alonso's
on who
good.
Well, yeah, but it's still. it depends on who you talk to. Mercedes it's a changing of the guard, right? Yeah. Hamilton's going to be gone, and they're going to be in a new age of that team. Wouldn't even surprise me if they even rebrand a little bit for next season. Like a lot of teams will do that when they go into a new era. Maybe they still stick with Mercedes, but they might change up the livery a little bit because, they know they're going into this new era of racing for the team. Yeah.
Maybe 2026 when everything happens.
Yeah. I think the team is prepared for the future changes that are upcoming for F1. I think that's when they got to capitalize, because I think right now it's, you look at this car and the way, it's all Red Bull's just dominated because this is a car that fits them, right? And I think once we get into that new age where we start seeing a lot of these, the zero carbon cars and this next evolution of F1, that's when we might see some parity on the grid again. And I hope it happens because F1 needs it. That's really what they need, is they need parity. They can't have one guy continue to win races, personally.
But I think this is the issue potentially with it's not just it's not Verstappen's fault. Ideally, the second Red Bull driver should also be way ahead of everybody else and competing with Verstappen, but that's just not happening. Because the thing now between when Mercedes was dominating is that you had, Rosberg and Hamilton. They were battling first and second. Rosberg actually won, in 2017. So that's just not happening now. For Mercedes,
it's Verstappen and Sainz. That's pretty much it. Sainz has a shot here and there, or Leclerc.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say Leclerc probably over Sainz, but Sainz has been the one. The two races that Verstappen hasn't won in the last calendar year
have been Sainz.
Have been Singapore and Sainz, and then Sainz at Singapore, and then most recently Australia with Sainz. All right, let's move on. We got Ricciardo and Lance Stroll. All right, here we go. Let's spill the tea.
He's back.
This. So, here's what happened. We are coming up to the virtual safety car restart. This is the hairpin. This is the turn 15 hairpin. Basically, what happens is there is a concertina effect. Everybody's slowing down. And that right there is Ricciardo in the air. And that right behind him is Lance Stroll. Now, here's what happened. Everybody braked. Everybody had to progressively get harder on the brakes. Piastri had to get harder on the brakes. That's him right in front of Ricciardo. Ricciardo had to get harder on the brakes. And Stroll did not press the brakes. In fact, after looking at video review, Lance Stroll was not looking in front of him. He was looking this way. He was driving, right? He was driving, and he was looking this way. And then all of a sudden, it's like when you're texting and driving and you rear end the guy in front of you. That's exactly what happened. Now, I'm not saying that from experience. I've never rear-ended anybody, knock on wood. But that's effectively what happened. He wasn't looking at the road in front of him. He was looking at the apex right there, looking at his turn before he turned. It's like they say in football. You start thinking about all the yards after the catch before you made the catch, and you don't catch the screen pass. Ends up getting intercepted for a pick six. This is what happened. He was thinking about the turn before getting to the turn. So he slammed into Ricciardo. Piastri had he effectively was out for the race. He still finished 8th. Ricciardo was out for the race. Stroll had a 10-second penalty. And the crazy thing about this is that in the press conference, Ricciardo was like, Yeah, it happens. I'm kind of over it now. And then someone told him that Lance Stroll said it was Ricardo's fault. And that's where we got the thumbnail for this video. Because Ricardo's like, well, that kind of infuriates me now. How is he saying it's my fault? Which is completely true. After looking at all the video, like I said, Stroll was not even looking at Ricardo.
Yeah, this is what Ricardo says.
Well, that's what he tried to do. But yeah, Lance Stroll ended up blaming Ricardo because he said Ricardo stopped quickly. Yes, everybody stopped quickly. This was going to eventually happen. But the thing is, the reason that the FIA gave you a penalty, Lance, is because they saw that you weren't even looking at Ricardo in front of you. You're looking to the right. So,
yeah, this happened in IndyCar this weekend too, in Long Beach with Colton Herta and Joseph Newgarden. And for fans who haven't seen it, it happened also as well. So yeah, it happens in racing, man, especially on these turns like that. It can be tough. So
yeah, because everybody's trying to get going for the restart, but you got to pay attention to what's in front of you. You have to expect everybody's going to be bunched up. Now, like I said, yes, Piastri did brake heavily. Ricardo did brake heavily. Lance might have ran into him. And I think that's where Ricardo's like, yeah, it happens, blah, blah, blah. But, Stroll's blaming me for it? So, yeah, that's where, Ricardo needs to start getting better at stuff. And then he was having a great race. He was in the points. You can see by the drivers he's around, that's a Ferrari right there. It's a McLaren right there. That's Alonso right there. He was in the points. And this happens to him. So, very unfortunate. Looking at the race results here, anything that stands out to me, Lando getting second. I mean, that's impressive, to say the least. Checo getting third. I would like to see something different at Red Bull next year, as a Red Bull fan.
Nico Hülkenberg getting 10th, pretty solid performance for the Haas driver.
He's had a lot of those this year. He's had 3 of them. So he's consistently getting there. Gasly 13th. I think that was his best.
Especially at a track that not a lot of guys may have raced on, like some of the newer guys, some of the younger guys who may have just got up to the series in the past few years.
Yeah.
This is a new track for them. So it's pretty impressive for them to be able to point their way in.
And for someone like Yuki, who's been in the sport for 5 years, this is the first time he's raced here, which is kind of crazy. Joe, 14th in his home race. Hamilton, 9th, as we mentioned. Leclerc ahead of Sainz for like the first time this year, right? Unless maybe he finished ahead of him in Japan last week. He might have. I can actually look that for you right now. No, he didn't. Sainz finished ahead of Leclerc last week. So, believe this is the first time Leclerc finished ahead of Sainz. It only took a month and a half to happen. But what about you? Do you see anything jump out?
No, I mean, the top 10, bottom 10 is kind of what you would think of, right? Like, I mean, you look at that 11 through, 11 through 20, and nobody's really jumping out as me as like, oh, wow, that's surprising that they finished low. Great run by Hülkenberg. Pretty good run by Piastri, too. Not too bad at 8th there as well. Pretty solid run by him. McLaren had a nice weekend in China. I have to give them credit. They had a good run. Obviously, Lando got a little bit of a better finish, finishing on podium, but still a pretty solid weekend for McLaren.
Piastri had the damage, and he still finished it.
Yeah, absolutely. So still a pretty solid finish for McLaren. We'll see what happens in Miami. I mean, it's Haas's home, one of Haas's home races, right?
It's Logan Sargent's home race.
Logan Sargent's home race. I don't know, man. Miami it's a tricky track. It's a very technical circuit. It's not an easy track to race on. It's gonna be tough. It's actually a tighter road course, right? Like that's kind of what, if you look at the track, it's not easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I think there's a lot of low speed corners, which is something that the McLaren car has not been the best at. Mm-hmm. So
it's gonna be a tough race. It'll be interesting to see how they go.
I am making an early prediction. This will be the Ferrari double podium. It'll be a second and third for Sainz Leclerc.
And you got another double weekend too with the sprint.
Race. Yeah, there's more points on the board this week, so
absolutely
that's always nice to have. Okay, next, please. The pit stops. A lot of different strategies today. Alonso, 4 different tire compounds. Really, the medium tire was favored here. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Really just want to put this up there for you guys to kind of see how the race played out. The safety cars were a big part of this. We had a virtual safety car in the first half of the race, which ended up turning into a full-on safety car. And then you had the Magnussen and Tsunoda incident. So safety cars kind of ruined this. A graphic for me, but just throwing this out there so you guys can see it.
Pretty busy day for Valtteri Bottas at the bottom.
Another DNF. Can we talk about that potentially? I mean,
yeah, we'll go into that towards the end.
Yeah, all right. Nico Rosberg, let's get him on every broadcast from now on. He is just so passive aggressive. It's hilarious. Hamilton made a mistake, and he's like, "Yeah, that's not something that Hamilton should be doing." And like every time Crofty like threw something out there, Rosberg's like, "No, that's not what's happening. He just wasn't fast enough in this corner." Like he was the best. Let's get Nico on. He used to just be like a post-race kind of guy, but as a 2017 world champion and Hamilton's teammate, who he's still salty about. Every time Hamilton did something wrong, he was absolutely hilarious. When Magnussen wrecked Tsunoda, he was like, "Oh, K-Mag, what are you doing there? That's just not a good racing move." But like, let's get him on more broadcasts. Everybody on F1 Twitter agreed with me as well. So, yeah, Nico on more broadcast, please. All right, now let's look at these constructors. Really, the biggest. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to have a big face for a second as I look. Red Bull 54, Ferrari 31, 27 for McLaren, Mercedes 18 after that. Nothing really happening besides Haas, who they said, if you look at that graphic, look at all those ones. That's just Nico Hulkenberg for it. That's the Hulk.
That's impressive, though. I mean,
10th places.
three out of their last 4 races. That's an impressive run.
Yeah. He is just getting 10th places. And that's the one thing I don't like.
Except round 3, he finished in 7th.
Yeah. Like, why are they not ahead of RB? Because that's why I kind of fault the standings. And that's why they're actually this week talking about getting points down to 12th place. Because it would kind of even out the midfield a little bit better. But yeah, big week for Red Bull, big week for Ferrari, per usual.
As always.
McLaren could have potentially gotten more if Piastri didn't have damage, but that's not the case. And without Stroll's incident, Aston Martin could have got a bit more too. But
it's really a 2-team race for a championship, though. I mean,
it's not even a 2-team race; it's a 1-team race.
It's a 1-team race.
Let's look right now.
Unless Ferrari somehow finds a way to have a really good race down the stretch, and
but it's a 40-point lead already, and that's with the Australia incident.
It would be nice to see Haas move up to 6. Haas is an improving team. I think if they got the right drivers, I think they would be really good. I think Nico Hulkenberg is their future, but I think Kevin Magnussen probably needs to go at the end of this year.
I could see Behrman going there.
Yeah, I would like to. Oliver Behrman's a great driver. He's been really solid. He's been improving. I've been watching a lot of his work. He was in FE, Formula E, here testing in Misano last week, and he looks really good. So he's going to be a solid.
I actually want to look at the standings here because I think he's still he's 12th place in the standings. He's not even racing. Because he got 6 points. He's ahead of Hulkenberg, ahead of Magnussen, ahead of Albon, Ocon, Joe, Ricardo, Gasly, Bottas, and Sargent.
That's so crazy, right? He raced one race and is still 12th.
Yep. 12th place. And a championship he's not even running in. My driver of the day, Lando Norris. 2nd place. He didn't know where to park his car on the podium. I thought that was hilarious. But overall for Lando, it was a really solid day. He stretched out his tires. He was faster than a majority of the drivers out there on used tires as well. Never had any issues. Was consistently quick, consistently faster than Leclerc, consistently faster than Russell. And at the end of the day, he was always going to get 2nd place as long as he continued that. And this could have been his first race win if we had a Verstappen issue. He was that far ahead of everybody else. He finished 6 seconds ahead of Perez. which is where I kind of start having an issue with Perez a little bit. Should not be finishing 19 seconds behind your teammate and 6 seconds behind Lando. But Lando was my driver of the day. Second place, 18 points for the guy. My race rating is 7.6 out of 10. Look, it could have been higher if it wasn't on at 3 a.m. That would have got it to a 7.7. All jokes aside. 7.6 to me because it was predictable, but it was unpredictable at the same time with virtual safety cars and the safety car coming in. Like I said, with Lando getting second. You had Hulkenberg getting 10th, as we mentioned before. So I think the actual results of the race probably brought this higher. The whole Ricciardo and Stroll incident definitely boosted this up a couple of points. Was it the best race of the year so far? Probably, and I think that's saying a lot about how this season just is when there isn't really a battle for the win at all. The best race of the year is a 7.6, and we already knew the winner. The only reason this is the best race of the year is because we had some drama in the midfield, and Lando Norris got second instead of Perez or whoever. So 7.6 for me. Any closing thoughts for you, Dylan?
Yeah, no, no real closing thoughts. Excited for Miami here in a few weeks. I wanted to touch base on that since I will be in Miami potentially for the F1 weekend, and I'm very much looking forward to being there. I will be covering primarily Porsche Carrera Cup because that is an IMSA sanctioned series, and I like covering my IMSA races, as everybody knows. I am an IMSA writer. I cover the sport, and I also cover World Endurance Championship and other forms of racing as well.
Whack.
But WEC if for the fans around the world. But no, I want to look ahead to Miami. What are your thoughts on Miami? You have a prediction heading in. My pick, I'm actually going to go out on a limb. I'm going to have Sergio Perez win this race. I'm going to go with a little bit of an underdog pick there. So
yeah, I gave you my prediction a bit earlier when I said it's going to be a double Ferrari podium.
Got to pick who's going to win first.
Oh, come on. Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz. There you go.
I like it.
But I'm excited to have a sprint race and everything. Like I said, that race is going to be like 5 hours away from myself and actually be able to watch the sprint race, watch the sprint qualifying, watch the actual race at 4 p.m.
And you could actually get videos and text messages from a friend of yours.
Yes, and we could potentially use that on this show on May 5th. So yeah, make sure you guys tune in. We
may even be doing a show live from the track if we are able to get it set up. Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, he might be talking to Zoo. That's what he calls him. Or kick you out if you call him Zoo.
You could tell I don't follow F1 very heavily. So
he's just a producer.
We'll go with that, sure.
But yeah, I think that's all we got for you guys. Like I said, it was a solid race, but the fact that it's probably the best race of the year and Verstappen won and all that. It was only a good race because of the mid race and the safety car. That's about it. Otherwise, it was nice to have China back. Nice to have a home race for Guan Yu Zhou. But otherwise, I think that's all we got for you. I think that's it.
Yeah, that is all we got for you. Chris, thanks so much as always. Great work as always. Looking forward to getting to be on with you for Miami as we got a fun weekend in store. Yes. What's the oh dear. We're going off the rails on the Purple Sector podcast. Can't believe you'd be wearing that. I'm a Magic fan. You know that too. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that will do it here. Chris is gone off the rails. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we'll wait till Chris comes back to officially close things out here on the show, on the Purple Sector podcast. As you mentioned, and as I mentioned as well, I will be at the F1 race weekend and covering the event for the Porsche Carrera. What's going on? This is not Spalding Media Network quality, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize.
It's the end of the episode. We're just having a great time.
We're just having a good time, man. We're excited, though. F1, it's kind of the last little bit of racing we get in Florida until probably NASCAR comes back in August. So
in August.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be enjoyable. We got that going on. It's also SRO weekend, too, that weekend in Sebring. So it's a pretty busy weekend for me in terms of sports car coverage. I don't know what my plans are going to be, but I definitely would like to be out for the Miami race. So we're going to try to make it work and make it happen. But everybody, thanks so much for jumping on with us. Chris, as always, great work with the Purple Sector podcast. We'll see you guys on the other side for our next Spalding Media Network episode. Peace out, guys, and we'll see you later.
Woo!